Now if you see to this particular situation, in Goa no tax is paid, only purchases are being made, in the sense service has been obtained, but the tax gets transferred to the Maharashtra. Now where is the question of that consuming state getting the tax there? So there is some anomaly also. Whatever principle they are saying that this is a consumption based tax, but there is not always a situation. It may be a situation where actually consuming state is not getting anything and it is getting transferred, of course in relation to services, basically not in relation to goods. So this is how some changes can come up. But anyhow, this overall situation is that it will be in the consumption state. Coming to further our next definition which is relevant is input tax. As I told you, there is a difference between input and input tax. Input tax, section 2, subsection 57, in relation to a taxable person means the IGST and CGST or IGST and SGST charged on any supply of goods and or services to him which are used or are intended to be used in the course or furtherance of his business, and include the tax payable under subsection 3 of section 7. So friends, this is what exactly we are having ITC, input tax. Now in that there is either goods or services, and capital goods are not excluded. If you see only input, capital goods are excluded. If you come to input tax, there is no exclusion of capital goods, etc. That indirectly means you are entitled to set off even on the capital goods. Now further reference has to be made to subsection 58, which says input tax credit means credit of input tax as defined in section 256. So friends, there are a number of other definitions. I don't think we are required to go into this at this juncture for our ITC purpose. Now friends, as our Sujata Madam also in the morning told, that number of these provisions are related to services, service tax, and most of us may not be connected with service tax as on today, at least majority of course, and that is why we find that these provisions are new for us or something very difficult to immediately grasp it. Those who are service tax, probably the ISD etc., they know it very well. So it may be that we also be accustomed to that, but temporarily we have to look into these issues with reading of the definition sections carefully, so that we will not miss any important aspect of this. Then friends, we can now go to the proper section, section 16, which is very important. I think everybody has given the booklet today morning, can open it, so you can go on turning pages along with me. कम से कम दिन तो नहीं आएगा. Now friends, see, first subsection we have to read, because this is the major aspect of our discussion today. Every registered dealer
he is not referring to book.
Huh? Page number.
He is not referring to book.
मिल गया?
This book, this.
बड़ा बुक, बड़ा बुक, बड़ा बुक. Section 16, subsection 1. Every registered taxable person. Now we have all accustomed first of all with the term dealer. Now dealer is given go by. Now we have to go by taxable person. So every registered taxable person shall, subject to such conditions and restrictions as may prescribed, and within the time and manner specified in section 35, be entitled to take credit of input tax admissible to him, and the said amount shall be credited to the electronic credit ledger of such person. Now friends, this is a unique system. You will be entitled to ITC as per input tax. And input tax definition we have seen, it includes both goods and services. And that is why whatever tax you have paid, subject to they are in the course of or in the furtherance of business. According to that you will get it. And the mechanism is that as returns are filing will be there, it will be populated, then there will cross checking, and then everything will be there, and it will then by your return it will go to the electronic credit ledger. So there will be two ledgers. One is cash ledger, another is the electronic credit ledger. Credit ledger is only for ITC. And then there will be, of course, again parts IGST, CGST, SGST, and then you have to go utilizing that part one by one, what is permissible as per the sequence. So friends, I think to that extent there is no difficulty. What I feel is that there will be two stages before you get credit. One is a temporary credit will be given you on the ledger, and another one is the permanent. So what is the difference between temporary and permanent? Temporary will be till your supplier pays, it will not be final. Till that it will be in a ding 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 ding. And if you use that credit, temporary credit, and tomorrow suppose your supplier fails, then you are supposed to pay back that amount with interest. There is something like mechanism they have developed, very tight rope. It will be very difficult to see what is happening after 20 days, whether you want to use that temporary credit or not, that is up to you. Otherwise, only use the permanent credit and then whatever balance from the cash ledger, and then as next month or after that, whenever he pays and it becomes permanent, you start using that. Friends, coming to subsection 2. A person who has applied for registration under the Act within 30 days from the date on which he becomes liable to registration. This is for the newly registered dealers after GST becomes operative. It is not relating to the old dealers or our normal dealers going into the GST, not that. That is the transitional provision, that is going to be discussed separately. This is only after April 2017 GST becomes operative and somebody becomes liable for registration. Then to that party also they are going to give set off before whatever he has purchased before registration, but that is subject to conditions. That let us see. A person who has applied for registration under the Act within 30 days from the date on which he becomes liable to registration and has been granted such registration shall, subject to such conditions and restrictions as may be prescribed, be entitled to take credit of input tax in respect of inputs. Now here it is only inputs. So what is the effect? Other than capital goods, other than services. Input is only relating to goods. अभी उसके साथ में कुछ services लिया होगा, that you will not be entitled to. So inputs held in stock and inputs obtained in semi-finished or finished goods. Inputs contained in semi-finished or finished goods held in stock on the day immediately preceding the date from which he becomes liable to pay tax under the provisions of this Act. So suppose you become liable from 15th August. So whatever your stock is there of the goods and semi-finished goods and whatever finished goods in which that GST is contained, to that extent on 14th August, whatever is there on the 14th August, on that you will get set off or you will get the ITC. But you have to see that further conditions are there to that. So whatever you have purchased and sold before that date, you will not get anything. You will not get also on capital goods, but only on the stock of the material, raw material, finished goods, semi-finished goods, and only relating to the goods only, not of services. So this is how we will be able to entitle for this. I don't know why they are, because I think determination whether service tax, services which are obtained prior to that date, whether in stock or not, may be problem to them. For example, you have got your goods manufactured through some job worker, he has charged you and he has also charged you GST on that, labor charges. Now that is also actually part of those finished goods. So logically you should get set up of that also to the extent of they are in the stock. But then they have not allowed it. So whether it is a seamless credit or stopless credit or with some stoppage in that, we have to apply our mind. Because cascading effect, what they call, if really they want to remove, all these things should have been given straightforward. That is what we can say cascading effect is deleted or removed. Otherwise, that component still remains in your as a part of your cost. So friends, you have to remember these conditions before taking set off. Then 2A, a person who takes registration under subsection 3 of section 19, that is voluntary registration, shall subject to such conditions and restrictions as may be prescribed, be entitled to take credit of input tax in respect of the inputs held in stock and inputs contained in semi-finished or finished goods held in stock on the day immediately preceding the date of registration. Same thing, only instead of your regular registration, in case of regular registration, you have to be obtained registration within 30 days. Otherwise, you will not get set up on that stock, etc. If it is within time you obtain registration, then only they say that you will get it on the stock as on the previous day. In case of voluntary also, they say that whatever stock on the day prior to VRS, you will get the this set off or ITC, and that is how you have to look into this. Then friends, subsection 3, where any registered taxable person ceases to pay tax under section 8, he shall, subject to such conditions and restrictions as may be prescribed, be entitled to take credit of input tax in respect of inputs held in stock and inputs contained in semi so and so immediately preceding the date on which he becomes liable to pay tax under section 7. That is for compounding dealers, that if you are in composition and now getting transferred to the regular, then whatever was the stock on that day, preceding day, you will get set off as earlier. Now, conditions which are supposed to be seen is about subsection 3A. A taxable person shall not be entitled to take input tax credit under subsection 2, 2A or 3 in respect of any supply of goods and or services to him after the expiry of 1 year from the date of issue of tax invoice relating to such supply. So friends, if your invoice is prior to 1 year before you want to take credit, it will not be eligible. So maximum 1 year invoice will do. Prior to that, if you have purchased anything, that will not be eligible for the input tax credit. The amount of credit under subsection 2, 2A or subsection 3 shall be calculated in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles in such manner as may be prescribed. So on one hand they say that you should calculate it in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles in such manner as may be prescribed. Now confusion is here. Calculated in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Then what is again prescribed manner? Because once you go by generally accounting principles, then how again they will prescribe within that? Or they will going to prescribe generally accounting generally accepted accounting principles. Something is really required to be seen as and when the rules come. But this is how they have provided that you will get it except as per the prescription they are making. Coming further, friends, subsection 5. Where the goods and or services are used by the registered taxable person partly for the purpose of any business and partly for other purposes, the amount of credit shall be restricted to so much of the input tax as attributable to the purposes of his business. ये मैं बोला ना आपको, जैसे इनकम टैक्स में first they will look into what is your telephone expenses, what is your car expenses, etc., and then they will digital out of that for personal use. Similarly, here also now they have brought this provision, which is I think we are not luckily having under the VAT today. In VAT there are restrictions, like if your turnover is gross receipts and sale receipts are below 50%, etc., that provisions are there. But then it is very clear. Now here they say that you will get it only to the extent of they are attributable to the purpose of his business. So you have to now prove that this expenditure on which I am claiming ITC is for the purpose of business. Purchases of raw material, capital goods probably more not many issue because that is coming in your accounts accordingly. But in expenditure side, I think there will be difficulties. Sometimes they may raise issue now that suppose you have incurred expenditure of traveling or something like that, whether it is got a personal expenditure, etc. So all these issues may arise. You have to apply some proportion now under income tax. Slowly you know that they have brought that to the extent that if you have not allowed anything towards personal use or personal expenses, and then the ITO or income tax